Hello and welcome everyone to episode 3 of my Battling the Backlog series. Now this time around we're going to be looking at a lot of different games that have nothing in common, and I think you're all going to see exactly why it took me so long to put together another episode in this series, because a couple of the games I spent a ton of hours on. So before we get into the games, if you're new here, I do have a playlist up on my channel if you want to get up to speed on my Battling the Backlog series. Also, the main goal of this series is simple. It's an opportunity for me to discuss games that I'm playing for me. These aren't games that I want to spend a lot of time making individual coverage on, and they're games from my backlog or games that I'm trying to prevent entering my backlog. And it just allows me to share my passion on games other than indies and allow you to see what I play besides all of the different indie games and homebrews that I cover. So I do appreciate you being here and watching this episode, so I hope you enjoy. But without further ado, let's get into the first game. Nintendo World Championships NES Edition came out in the summer of 2024, and this is by no means a game that I should have spent nearly as much time playing as I did. But as a child of the NES era, this really hits home for me, and so I wanted to complete it for no other reason than my love for the NES era. This is a very bare bones, fairly lackluster compilation of essentially mini games in a way, where you're playing little challenges that are bits and pieces of a bunch of different NES games. There's a lot about this package that I find to be really disappointing, but for whatever reason, I wanted to complete it. And to me, complete it meant getting S ranks on everything, completing the legendary trial, unlocking all the badges and the icons. And that was the part that took me so long, because it is quite the grind to earn enough coins to actually accomplish this. But eventually I did, simply by playing maybe like 10-15 minutes here and there over the course of like a month or two. I did take a long hiatus from the game, but eventually did come back because I wanted to get it off my playing now shelf and put it onto my game shelf where it belongs. But this is just simply, like, not a great game, if I'm being completely honest. I really enjoyed the NES remix games way better than this. And I think one thing that's just really disappointing for this compilation as a whole is that it's literally just a compilation of little challenges. You can't play any of the games here in their entirety. And that seems like a missed opportunity. Like, why is it so taboo for Nintendo to give us the full versions of these games that they have already released over the decades since they originally came out multiple times? Like, there should have been at least maybe 4 or 5 of the NES games here that you could have unlocked with coins or by getting even like double S ranks or something on all of the challenges for that particular game. This is simply like not a game I recommend to literally anybody, unless you're like me and you're a hardcore NES fan. There's just not a lot of content here. Genuinely, within the first few days, I felt like I had seen everything there was to see. And I just played the multiplayer component of the game every week to earn those coins, because that seemed like the best way to do it, and unlock all my badges and all my icons. But this was just, it was alright. I'm not gonna say I loved it, but I didn't hate it. I guess it's somewhere in the middle. And I don't know why I'm starting with this game, but hey, I guess I started with the worst, so now let's get into the second one. Orcs Must Die Deathtrap is a spin-off of the Orcs Must Die numbered series, which I really enjoyed and have loved each and every entry in. This time around, they took the spin that everybody has taken with their games, and they made it a roguelite. Now, it is co-op. You can play it up to 4 players. I mostly played it 2. I did try 3, but playing it multiplayer on Xbox Series S introduced some serious issues. And these are things that to this day are still not fixed. It's performance issues galore, especially once you get later into runs, around mission 7, 8, and then 10 plus. Like, it becomes unplayable. But for those of you that don't know what Orcs Must Die is, this is basically a tower defense style game where you're guarding a rift or a crystal, and you have a bunch of different traps. It's a third-person shooter, and you do have some abilities at your disposal as well for your character. You're going to earn currency, and you can build traps. There's all different types: wall, ceiling, floor traps, things like that. And part of the fun of playing this co-op is that you can take different types of traps between you and your partner. And I played with my friend Scott, and him and I just got to the point where, as we were playing through this and trying to unlock all the achievements for the completion, like, we knew every single map how to build what we wanted to for our defenses and had it like nailed down perfectly. They are still updating this game. They have also added some decent content. They have added Gabriella from Orcs Must Die 2, which is the character that I started playing as really close to the end when we were wrapping up playing it. But this is a lot of fun. I just don't think that you should play this on Series S. Hopefully, Xbox Series X doesn't have the same issues as this, but it's really colorful. It's just unfortunate that it has crashes and some bugs and lots of performance issues on Series S. But hey, that's how I played it because it was on Game Pass and that's the console I have. But if you enjoy these types of tower defense slash third-person shooters, this one is mixed with roguelite elements, but I would say that play the older Orcs Must Die games first, because 2 in particular is a way better co-op game than this one is, and even 3 is a great co-op game. The first one is only single player, and I played it so long ago. I played the original Orcs Must Die on Xbox 360, but these games are also available on Steam, so they're really accessible, easy to pick up, and definitely a lot of fun. So I had a good time with this one.
Get ready! Go, go, go! Burn that trap!
As a big fan of kart racers, I jumped at the opportunity to cover Hot Rod Mayhem and preview it a few weeks early on my channel back in early April. Well, I also enjoyed it enough to continue playing it after that initial video, so I did want to talk about it again. I took it upon myself to play through all the different championships on the medium difficulty and genuinely had a lot of fun with it. It's not going to replace the better kart racers on the market like Mario Kart or Disney Speedstorm, but if you're looking for a single player or local co-op experience, you could certainly do a lot worse than this one. The items are pretty generic and a lot of them mimic items from the games I just mentioned, but what this game does really well is it has pretty unique level designs, and that was what kept me playing it for the duration of its single player campaign. Also, they did update it right before release after I published my initial preview video, and they did make the game better. They made the boost feel better, they added more options to the multiplayer component of it. Again, if you're gonna play it that way, I didn't, but you might. But getting back to the level designs, they're all really unique and different. There's so many different types of level hazards here that you really need to be on your A game in order to stay in first if you get there. But it's not just the level hazards that are going to be trying to take you out. There's these like heat-seeking rockets that are basically like the blue shell, and these things are ruthless when you're in first place. Thankfully, there are bubbles that you can get and shield yourself, and then that'll protect you from it. But the items are really not interesting in terms of being in first place, because you have the same crap coming at you all the time. The boosting feels somewhere in between Mario Kart and Disney Speedstorm, so it's not quite as fluid as Speedstorm, but not quite as stiff as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Hopefully next month with Mario Kart on Switch 2, we're going to get a more fluid controlling Mario Kart game, because going from Speedstorm to Mario Kart was pretty drastic difference for me. And hey, if you're looking for a kart racer to keep you busy till Switch 2 drops in a few weeks, this is the one. Like, it's not that expensive, it's pretty enjoyable. There's a lot of different levels and customizations. You can play the levels backwards, then twisted variants. There's 30 total tracks, but they're essentially 10, just each one 3 different ways. But this is a budget kart racer that is absolutely worth playing, and I had a lot of fun playing through the championship mode. I wasn't so much into the cosmetics and the things you unlock, but there's also a lot of variety there as well, depending on which difficulty you play on, depends on what you'll unlock. So you can customize your character and your kart. So this is a fun one, and probably a game that not many of you have heard of. Now, I want to apologize in advance for this next game, because I know this is probably going to be hard to look at for some of you that don't understand what the Virtual Boy is or why it's in red and black. But I'm so glad I played this in 2D through emulation, because if I was playing this through an actual Virtual Boy console, I swear I would have had such a migraine looking at this thing. But this is Wario Land for Virtual Boy. The first Virtual Boy game that I have ever played. Now, why did I play this? Well, for one, I really enjoy the Wario Land games. And then additionally, because this is widely understood to be the best Virtual Boy game. And I can absolutely see this. This is a really great 2D platformer. Now, being in red and black like this, it does have some issues because it's hard to tell the depth in the foreground and the background, and everything kind of just blends in together because it's flat when it was intended to be in 3D, and then there's no colors, so it's got no depth to it. So I had a hard time in some of the later levels, like figuring out when I can go in the background and when I should be in the foreground. It has that unique mechanic that clearly inspired the indie great Mutant Mud series. But what blew my mind the most about this is that it's actually really challenging. It's really fun and rewarding to play through. Like, it's crazy that there's this good of a 2D platformer on such a crappy console. And why hasn't this been remade? Like, I can't even begin to imagine how good they can make this with some quality of life improvements, color, and just expanding upon the idea and adding some new bonus levels and things like that. But playing through this and trying to find all the secrets and complete all of these different, like, micro objectives that you have other than just playing through each level from start to finish was surprisingly fun. Looking at it still did bother my eyes a little bit, even though it's not in 3D. So I played this in very short chunks of like a level or two over the course of like a week or so. But I could genuinely say that if you're ever interested in playing a Virtual Boy game, make it this one, because I had a lot of fun with this, and I'm pretty impressed that there's something this good on something that crap. Now, other than Orcs Must Die Deathtrap, this game right here is the one that kept me busy the longest, and that's why this episode took so long to create. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition finally landed on Nintendo Switch. Now, a little history of me and this game is that I actually did have a Wii U. I got it pretty close to launch, and I did buy this game. But what I didn't do is play through it in its entirety. I only played a couple hours, and then I never went back to it. And I don't quite remember the reason for that. I want to say part of it was that I was just really busy at the time, and then I did sell my Wii U prior to the Switch coming out and all my games, so obviously I just never had this available to me to play through. But this is definitely one of the Wii U games that I was praying got ported. I'm a huge fan of the Xenoblade Chronicles series. I know there's a lot of us out there that are, and I was curious to see where this game lands. because it's interesting that this fell between Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 in terms of its release. And since Xenoblade 1 is my favorite of the trilogy, and Xenoblade 2 is my least favorite, how does this game stack up? Well, it lands in third place of the 4 games in the series so far. Xenoblade 1's my favorite, Xenoblade 3 is my second, this is third, Xenoblade 2 is by far last for me. There's a lot of elements of the map design there that I really hated, and that kind of hurt it for me. And I didn't really love the combat either, if I'm being honest. But Xenoblade Chronicles X, the only things I didn't love about this is that some of the music just wasn't up to par with the rest of the series. And then the other thing is that since there's a multiplayer focus and so many different characters that you can recruit and add to your party of 4, it never felt like you had that same relationship and bonding experience with the characters as you do in the first and third game, where it's more streamlined and you only have a smaller party. Just the personalities as a whole of each of the characters isn't as much the strong suit as those games. So I think the writing's a bit lacking. I don't have any issues with the story as a whole, but just the characters, they're not quite as relatable and lovable. But in terms of the gameplay, this is definitely much closer to Xenoblade Chronicles 1, which I absolutely love. And that was the hook for me that kept me playing far beyond the 70 hours that I spent playing through the campaign. There's so many different types of missions in this game. I continued to play this for 20 hours after the 70 I spent beating it, all the way up to like 90 or so hours, and I might come back to this and dive into some of the side questing and things that I still have left. There's also some epilogue missions that I think were new content that was added for this release. But playing through this game is so addicting because there's so many different things to do. Every single thing you do, whether it's missions, collectibles, working on the Collectopedia, trying to boost the affinity of your characters, every little thing grants you progress and growth. And you're constantly moving forward. And you need to, because this game's pretty tough. I died a lot of times in this, and maybe that's my fault. I don't know if I was wandering into areas that I didn't necessarily belong in, but there's a lot of high-level monsters that seem to get aggroed without me really doing anything. I don't recall that being the case in the other Xenoblade games, but here I would just get destroyed at times and have to track all the way back through. And running through the game initially is pretty slow going, but then eventually in the later game, you do unlock a mech, which in the game are called skells, and this is when it really starts to get fun, and that I wanted to backtrack to a lot of the areas that I had already been through, because now I can get more verticality, I can go through faster. You can also take down some of these huge monsters that you've seen but knew not to mess with for the first like 50 hours of the game, because you can fight in your skells. And this introduced a new gameplay style that was unlike anything else that I had played in the series up to this point. Multiplayer is a huge component to this game, and while it's not something I was looking for and didn't try out, if you're interested in a multiplayer experience for the Xenoblade Chronicles series, it is here, and there is a focus on it. Then the last thing I want to mention is, although I didn't love the writing and the characters in this one compared to the other games, there was one standout for me, and that's everyone's favorite Nappan from this game, Tatsu. My boy Tatsu, he's kinda crazy.
Tatsu have just the thing. Friends fuel up with Tatsu Tasty Lunchbox.
And then last, but certainly not least, is a game that I was revisiting essentially because I had played this years ago. It's crazy to think how long ago this came out on the Nintendo Wii, but this is Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Now, the first thing you need to know is that if Diddy Kong is in a game, I'm gonna play it. Diddy Kong's my guy. He's been one of my favorite characters ever since I was a kid. We were first introduced to him with Donkey Kong Country, but then he got his own game with Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, which is always going to be a weird name. Why isn't it Diddy Kong's Quest? It's whatever. It is what it is. But anyways, getting back to the topic at hand, this was a game that at first I saw a lot of controversy around it because people were analyzing the trailers and, oh, the water doesn't look that good, and really being hypercritical of the visuals. And to me, this is now the definitive way to play this game. It plays just as good, if not better, than it did all those years back then. They added a new difficulty, which is going to help those of you that struggle with platformers like this. And make no mistake about it, this game is far more difficult than a lot of Nintendo's platformers. The Super Mario 2D games and also Kirby's 2D games pale in comparison to the difficulty that this game brings. It has those infamous minecart stages, and then just in general, there's a lot of times where you're gonna die and it's gonna have nothing to do with your health. You're gonna fall in pits. Thankfully, there's a shop where you can spend your banana coins and get different power-ups and items to help you on your quest. But even as somebody that is good at platformers and additionally has played this game before, not only on Wii, but a little bit on 3DS, I still had some trouble towards the end of the game, specifically with the final boss. But this was a wonderful game for me to revisit, and I had so much fun playing through it. There's a lot of different things to unlock, and I enjoy looking at the artwork and everything presented there in the gallery. There's the branching paths on the overworld, so you always have your option. There's tons of secrets, and literally every single level has puzzle pieces and the 4 Kong letters to collect to unlock even more things in the game. And these puzzle pieces are hidden in very tricky places, and often when they are in plain sight, they're going to be in places that are most likely going to cause you to meet your demise. Thankfully, checkpoints are pretty plentiful, and the game is forgiving since it's very easy to earn 1-ups. But this is definitely a more challenging type of platformer, and I'm sure most of you already know about it or have played it. But if you haven't yet, you absolutely should, especially since it's very frequently on sale on Woot.com, which does have Nintendo first-party games, which are often $10 to $15 to sometimes $20 off the MSRP. And I think we all know that Nintendo's first-party games very rarely go on sale, but that's how I picked it up, because I'm going to be honest, this wasn't a release that should have been $60 to me. They released Metroid Prime Remastered at $40, but somehow this game, which was literally just an HD version of a Wii game that then also had the bonus levels from the 3DS, equals a $60 game? I don't know, that just didn't make sense to me. I know we're all looking at the Switch 2 pricing and scratching our heads a bit because it's all over the spectrum. Hopefully Nintendo doesn't go too crazy with it and set a bad precedence, but we are overdue for pricing to go up on games, if I'm being completely honest. It's just that the same way I understand that some games should be 80 or 70 or maybe even 90 in certain instances, games should also be at times 40 or 50 or maybe even less than that. And that's just not something that I think Nintendo understands at this current time. But hopefully if we speak with our wallets, they will. Didn't mean to go on a rant, but I did want to wrap up this video with just a little bit of an interesting topic. So if you have anything to add with what I just discussed, leave it in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully my next episode won't take quite as long. If I'm being honest, I do have a lot of RPGs in my backlog. I'm trying to only play like 1 per episode so that it doesn't take me 3, 4, 5 months to do these. Because if I do multiple RPGs in a row, these episodes will just never come out. So if you enjoyed it, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Comment below and let me know what you've been playing. Have you scratched any games off the backlog that have been there for a while, or are you mainly diving into new releases? I'd love to hear what you guys are playing. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.